So by now we're all aware of the cattle rancher in Arizona who's now having his huge struggle against the Bureau of Land Management. Now basically this guy has a ranch, he has cows, and he's been using federal property without paying it for like 20 years. You have to pay a fee to use federal land to graze your cows. Now he has an argument that he shouldn't have to pay and that he's not been paying for a very long time. He's been getting away with not paying it for a very long time. He now, according to the government, owes over $1 million in unpaid fees. So what's happened is that a whole ton of militiamen have now come down to defend this guy, and there's now, quasi-armed standoffs with police. Although from the footage I've seen, these militiamen don't seem to actually have guns in the video, but that's besides the point. They've certainly declared their intention to do so. The BLM has this land. The federal government has land that people use to graze cows. Now, this became something that was nationalized way, way back because essentially ranchers were just eating up all the grass and destroying it. This is the profit motive. Me, mine, mine. So essentially, in order to make it sustainable, that patches can regrow and then people can continue to use the same land over and over again so that it's not all wasted and destroyed in one shot, they nationalized it. Portioned it out so that the land would not be destroyed. There's also the issue about the desert tortoise, but I doubt the BLM actually really cares about that. So in other words, we have something nationalized so that private business interests, even small petty bourgeois farmers like himself, don't destroy it. Now what we have here is a case where he feels he doesn't have to pay for it. In other words, this is again a very first world libertarian mentality. I want all the advantages of a privileged society, but I don't want to have to pay anything for it. I don't want to have to contribute anything to it.
Bundy claims states' rights, saying his cattle have grazed here for decades.
I have no contract with the United States government.
Now, that choice of words is very interesting to me. Now, there's a particular group of people that I'm familiar with because I've studied some of their work, some of their legal work, I should say. Sovereign citizens, or free man on the land, as they're called in Canada. I'm not saying he's a sovereign citizen because I don't have any proof of that. I'm saying from some of the statements that he's given, like the one I just gave now, that certainly does sound like what he's doing. That has a very distinct tone to me about it. So it does kind of seem that way. Now when we do consider the substance of what he's saying, he's like, well, this law doesn't apply to me because I never signed an agreement to do it. I never signed an agreement for this to happen. Well, this is a very common thing for sovereign citizens to do, to essentially claim the law doesn't apply to them because they, quote, never consented to it. It's not voluntary. Although sovereign citizens tend not to be very philosophically developed. They're very, very superficial and largely don't even understand the quasi-libertarian philosophies that they're actually using, whether they realize it or not. But this is that same kind of sense of entitlement. Well, I live in this privileged society, but I don't want to have to contribute anything to it. I never consented to that, so therefore I shouldn't have to go along with the rules. The problem here is with these militiamen now coming in, there's a potential for violence. Anytime these guys get together with their rabid anti-government stance, usually philosophically very, very weak and really don't get anything, which is why largely they put forward some very rhetorical legal arguments that frankly don't hold up in court. Long story short, kind of like the this is the Constitution doesn't apply to me, and then when they get arrested, oh, these are my rights according to the Constitution. Again, you'll have to research that to get more information. But the point is, when these guys come in, they come in with guns, and frankly they're dumb. Dumb people and guns is, well, a really bad thing, and frankly an American tradition. But we've certainly all noticed the huge media hysteria that's come out of this. Now, it could be a lot bigger, but it's frankly not, because the whole situation does make the BLM look bad, even though I would sincerely doubt that they're actually the bad guys in this situation. Here's a little bit of perspective on the history of the BLM. A lot of people don't know this. Frankly, almost nobody knows this. The BLM has been, frankly, terrorizing the Lakota Nation since forever. The BLM the Bureau of Land Management, has been terrorizing Native Americans for a very, very long time. Now here's one specific incident. An alcohol distributor, manufacturer, particularly distributor, set up near a Native American reservation. And they sold alcohol at like next to nothing. Like bargain basement prices, like pocket change could get you alcohol. And like all Native American reservations, they have a huge, huge problem with alcoholism. Now this was done maliciously. They're going to get their money, and frankly, they're going to try to wipe out the reservation at the same time. So the community, actually caring about each other, form a protest action. They're going to protest this alcohol distributor from basically destroying their reservation. The BLM comes in on the side of the alcohol company. There was a lot of underhanded tactics. There was a lot of things that you couldn't prove conclusively 100% that the BLM was behind, quasi-black ops kind of things against Native Americans. But my point is with all this, where was the outrage? There's no outrage when the BLM does these things to Native Americans. And this wasn't even that long ago. Where are the militiamen when Native Americans are being destroyed by that same government body that these guys are against? There's dead silence on them. They don't care. When it happens to an indigenous population, when it happens to people of color, these militiamen are dead silent, and they've got nothing to say. But if something appears to be oppressive to some poor petty bourgeois white farmer that just didn't want to contribute to the society that he's a part of, now there's a national outrage. Now they have to step in and say something about this poor exploited guy. And that is very telling of the militia movement itself. I guess their white feelings were hurt. But this sort of thing happens all the time. Just look at the recent events in Zimbabwe. For the longest time, this exceedingly small white minority owned 70% of the agricultural land, meaning they held all the power. They held all the wealth. Mugabe comes in, kicks out all the white landowners, and redistributes it to the poor black masses. Real social justice, real change. Then, international outrage. How dare he take away all that land from the poor, rich, privileged white people and give it to the poor black masses, the majority of the country who are living in poverty. Oh, nobody for the longest time has got anything to say about the white people owning everything, holding all of the social power and economic power. But when somebody takes that away and redistribute it to the people who should have power, the people themselves, the black majority in an African nation, all of a sudden the outrage flies out of everybody and everyone starts screaming about property rights. Everybody's sad for the white landowners who lost all their power, but nobody shed a tear for the overwhelmingly majority black nation that was suffering from grinding poverty. There was no outrage from first world peoples about this black majority being oppressed, just as there is no outrage from the first world peoples over what is happening to Native Americans when the BLM does that to them. This is a very typical first worldist stance. Nobody's upset about anything that happens to the truly oppressed. When the government comes down on them, they look the other way. Every time the astronomically high rates of, another incident happens where a black person is killed by a cop, an extrajudicial killing, it's always somehow the black person's fault. Nobody gives a damn. But if some poor, white guy gets killed, then it's a national outrage. The same reason why when, some little black girl goes missing, the media ignores it, but some pretty white blonde girl goes missing, it's national news for like 10 months. This is the face of first worldist peoples. They do not, absolutely refuse to care about any truly oppressed minority. or actually, in essence, globally, the real majority. But when anything happens to them, when anything happens to privileged white people, a petty bourgeois farmer, and that's what he is, petty bourgeois. He owns his own means of production. He's not employed by anybody. He is petty bourgeois. But when anything happens to him, all of a sudden, there's a national outrage, and everybody must be involved. And everybody has to come running to the defense of this poor guy at the hands of the U.S. government. Why? Because he didn't want to pay his fair share. You know, just take a look at the "Don't Tread on Me" flags that are all over the place. You know, he's trying to invoke things like states' rights. It's federal property. Forget it. But this is the real face of first worldists. Everybody's jumping on the defense of this, you know, poor white petty bourgeois farmer. But nobody gives a damn about anything that the BLM has done to Native Americans. As I said, that is the true face of first worldism. Thank you for watching. Please comment and rate the video. If you liked it, hit subscribe or check out some of these other great videos. If you wish, share it on social media. While you're at it, why don't you follow me on Twitter? And if you got time, go on over to the MRN bookstore and check out some of the latest books available.